My name is Maya Bennett, and I'm 29 years old. I was sitting in a hospital consultation room with a plastic wristband around my wrist, a folder of medical forms in my lap, and a pain in my lower back that had started to feel less like pain and more like a warning. My parents sat beside me. My mother, Diane, kept smoothing the edge of her purse like she was annoyed the appointment was taking so long. My father, Robert, stared at the floor with his arms crossed. The financial counselor had just explained the estimated out-of-pocket cost for my spinal surgery. It wasn't a small amount. I knew that. I had known that for weeks. But my parents had promised me they would help. Then my mother gave this soft little sigh, the kind she used when she wanted to sound sad without actually being sorry. "Maya," she said, "we just don't have the money." My father nodded immediately. "Not right now. Things are tight." I stared down at the paperwork in my lap. Things were tight. That was what they called it. 3 weeks earlier, they had paid for upgraded ocean view rooms at my brother Tyler's destination wedding resort. They had covered part of the reception package because Tyler and his fiancée wanted the sunset terrace. My mother had bragged about the custom welcome bags. My father had laughed about how expensive the open bar was going to be. But my surgery? The surgery that would decide whether I could keep working without limping by noon? That was where the family suddenly had to be careful. I lowered my head because if I looked at them, I knew my face would betray me. And the worst part was, I didn't even argue. I just sat there quietly, holding the edge of the folder so tightly the paper bent under my fingers. Then the door opened. The doctor walked in, looked down at his tablet, and started to say my name. But he stopped. Not paused. Stopped. His eyes moved from me to my parents. My mother looked up first, annoyed by the silence. My father turned a second later. The doctor's face changed in a way I couldn't understand at first. Recognition. Shock. Something colder underneath it. Then he looked directly at them and said, "You're his parents?" The room went completely still. My mother blinked. My father's arms slowly uncrossed. And I felt something shift in my chest because the doctor was not looking at them like strangers. He knew them. And from the way his jaw tightened, whatever he remembered was not good. If you've ever been treated like the difficult one just because you finally needed help, stay with me. Tell me where you're listening from, your city and local time. Subscribe if stories like this speak to you, like this video if you're already on Maya's side, and turn on the notification bell so the next story finds you when it drops. Around here, quiet people notice more than others think, and sometimes the truth walks in wearing a white coat. Now let me take you back. Before that hospital room, before the wristband, before my parents looked at a doctor and realized too late that they had underestimated the wrong person, I had spent most of my life being the easy child. That was the word everyone used. Easy. Maya won't mind. Maya understands. Maya can wait. Maya doesn't need much. I worked as an administrative assistant at an elementary school, which meant my days were full of ringing phones, scraped knees, forgotten lunchboxes, and parents who expected me to know where everything was. I liked the routine. I liked being useful. Maybe that was part of the problem. I had learned young that being useful was the closest thing to being loved. My younger brother Tyler was different. Tyler was the one my parents worried about. Tyler was sensitive. Tyler needed encouragement. Tyler couldn't handle disappointment. When he forgot bills, my father helped him. When he needed a car, my mother said young men needed reliable transportation. When he got engaged, my parents acted like the whole family had been blessed with a royal announcement. I was happy for him at first. I really was. But his wedding slowly became the sun everyone orbited around. There were group chats about flights, resort colors, cocktail menus, linen upgrades, beach photos, and whether guests should receive embroidered towels or little bottles of local rum in their welcome bags. Meanwhile, I was learning how to get out of bed without gasping. My back injury had started years before, after a fall I never fully treated because there was always another family emergency. Tyler needed tutoring. My grandmother needed rides. My parents needed help sorting insurance papers. I told myself the pain was manageable. Then manageable became daily. Daily became frightening. By the time the surgeon recommended an operation, I had already started sitting in my car before work with both hands on the steering wheel, waiting for the first wave of pain to pass so I could walk into the school smiling. When insurance approved part of the procedure, my parents sat at my kitchen table and promised they would help with the rest. My mother reached across the table and touched my hand. "We'll figure it out," she said. "You're not doing this alone." I believed her because I wanted to. On the counter beside us was Tyler's wedding invitation, thick cream cardstock with gold lettering, already addressed to me as if attendance were not a question. Under it sat the first hospital packet, the one with the emergency contact form. I filled in my mother's name automatically. I didn't even think about it. That is what family is supposed to be, right? The person they call when something happens to you. The person who comes. The person who does not make your fear feel inconvenient. So when the surgery date moved closer, I held on to that promise. Even when my mother changed the subject whenever I mentioned costs. Even when my father said he wanted to review everything later. Even when Tyler's wedding expenses kept growing like they were more urgent than my spine. I told myself my parents were just stressed. I told myself they loved me in their own way. I told myself that when we got to the hospital, when the numbers were real and my name was on the forms and the wristband was around my wrist, they would remember I was their daughter too. And the smallest, most fragile part of me still believed they might choose me. The week before the appointment, I started moving through my days like someone twice my age. I learned which chairs at work had enough support. I learned to keep a heating pad in the bottom drawer of my desk, under the extra folders and printer labels, because I didn't want anyone asking questions. I learned to smile while standing at the front office window, even when my right leg tingled all the way down to my ankle. At the elementary school, there was never really a good time to be in pain. Someone always needed a late slip. Someone always forgot their lunch. Someone always came in crying because they couldn't find their classroom after music. I liked being the person who knew what to do. I liked handing a child a tissue and saying, "You're okay," even on days when I wasn't sure I was. But by then, the pain had started interrupting the small things. Getting dressed took longer because bending forward sent a sharp pull through my lower back. Carrying groceries up the stairs to my apartment became something I planned around. At night, I slept with a pillow under my knees and woke up every few hours anyway. And while I was counting pills, saving receipts, and reading insurance language I barely understood, my phone kept lighting up with wedding updates. Tyler's wedding group chat never slept. Someone sent photos of the resort pool. My mother sent a message about welcome bags and asked whether guests would prefer sunscreen, mints, or mini bottles of rum. My father replied with a joke about how the open bar was going to bankrupt him, followed by 3 laughing emojis. I stared at that message for a long time. Then I put my phone face down and went back to highlighting a paragraph about deductibles. That was the strange part. Nobody was acting like anything was wrong. My parents still talked about money constantly, but only in the way people talk when they are annoyed by expenses they have already decided are worth it. My mother called me one evening while I was lying on the floor because it was the only position that made the pressure ease. She talked for 12 minutes about Tyler's seating chart. Then she said, almost as an afterthought, "By the way, don't mention the surgery stuff around your brother this week." I closed my eyes. "Why?" "He's under a lot of stress," she said. "The wedding is close, and I don't want him feeling guilty." I almost laughed, but nothing about it was funny. "He doesn't have to feel guilty," I said carefully. "I know that. I just mean, let's not put more on him." More. That word stayed with me after we hung up. As if my pain was a weight I might accidentally drop onto Tyler's celebration. My father was more direct, but he made it sound practical. He stopped by my apartment 2 days later to look at the hospital estimate. He sat at my kitchen table with reading glasses low on his nose, tapping his finger against the paper like the numbers had personally offended him. "Maybe we should ask if this can wait until after the wedding," he said. I stood by the sink, gripping the counter. The surgeon said waiting could make recovery harder. "I'm not saying cancel it," he said. "Just delay it a little. Get through one major family thing at a time." One major family thing. That was what he called it. Not my spine. The wedding. On the table between us, Tyler's invitation still sat under a magnet from the resort travel agency. I had moved it there because I needed the counter space for hospital packets, and somehow it bothered me that the invitation kept ending up on top. Later that night, I scrolled back through my texts. I don't know what I was looking for exactly. Proof, maybe, or permission to stop doubting myself. There it was. A message from my mother from 2 months earlier. We will help with whatever insurance doesn't cover. Don't stress yourself sick over money. I read it 3 times. Then I took a screenshot. Not because I planned to use it. I wasn't there yet. But because I needed some part of reality saved outside my own memory. Tyler called me the next day. He sounded distracted, like he was driving or doing something else while talking. He asked how I was feeling, but before I could answer, he started telling me about a problem with the photographer's travel fee. I listened. That was what I did. When there was a small pause, I said, "Mom and Dad are worried about money." He went quiet for half a second. "Yeah, the wedding got more expensive than we thought." I meant with my surgery. "Oh." He cleared his throat. "Right. I mean, that sucks. But they already paid a lot of deposits, you know? It's not like they can just undo everything." I sat on the edge of my bed, one hand pressed against my back. "I know. And you're still coming, right?" he asked. "Mom said you might be weird about it." Weird. I looked at the cream invitation on my table and imagined myself standing barefoot in sand, smiling for pictures while hiding how much it hurt to stand. "I haven't decided," I said. He sighed, not angry exactly, just inconvenienced. "Maya, don't make it a thing." After we hung up, I packed my hospital folder. Insurance approval letter. Estimate. Medication list. Surgical instructions. Emergency contact form. The old text screenshot stayed on my phone, hidden behind the lock screen, but I knew it was there. On the morning of the appointment, my mother insisted they drive me. She said it would look better if we all went together and got everything sorted out as a family. I wanted to believe that. I wanted to believe the ride there was quiet because everyone was nervous, not because something had already been decided without me. My father drove. My mother sat in the front seat answering wedding messages, her nails clicking against her phone screen. I sat in the back with the folder on my lap, watching the hospital grow closer through the windshield. When we pulled into the parking garage, my mother turned around and gave me a tight smile. "Let's just hear what they say," she said. But she didn't look at the folder. And my father didn't turn off the engine right away. He just sat there with both hands on the steering wheel, staring ahead like he was preparing himself to disappoint me. That was when the last little piece of hope inside me started to feel less like hope and more like a warning. We walked into the hospital together, but it didn't feel like together. My mother went ahead of me toward the check-in desk, moving fast like she wanted to get it over with. My father stayed half a step behind, carrying nothing, while I held the folder against my chest and tried not to limp too much. At the desk, the woman asked for my ID and insurance card. I handed them over. She printed the wristband and wrapped it around my left wrist. The plastic was stiff and cold, and for some reason, seeing my name on it made everything feel more real than the pain had. Maya Bennett. Date of birth. Medical record number. Proof that I was not exaggerating. Proof that I was not being dramatic. Proof that something inside my body needed help. My mother glanced at the band, then looked away and checked her phone. We were sent to financial clearance first. A woman in a navy cardigan brought us into a small office with 2 chairs and a rolling stool. My parents took the chairs before I could sit down, so I eased myself onto the stool, pretending it didn't hurt. The counselor was kind. She explained the estimate slowly. Insurance had approved part of the surgery, but there would still be an out-of-pocket amount. There were payment options, she said. There might be assistance programs depending on documentation. Nothing had to be decided in panic. I nodded and kept my hands folded over the folder. My father cleared his throat. "So this is the amount due before surgery?" "Not all of it up front," the counselor said. "There are several options." My mother gave a small, tight laugh. "Options are still bills." The counselor smiled politely, the way people do when they sense family tension and try not to step into it. I waited for my mother to say what she had said at my kitchen table. I waited for her to say, "We're helping her." Instead, she looked at me like she was disappointed I had brought her into something uncomfortable. "Maya," she said softly, "your father and I talked." My stomach tightened. I already knew. I think I knew from the car. Maybe even before that. But knowing something is coming does not make it hurt less when it arrives. "We just can't do this right now," she said. The counselor lowered her eyes to the paperwork. My father leaned forward. "It's not that we don't want to help. It's timing. Everything is hitting at once. Everything." I looked at him. "You said you would help once insurance approved it." My voice came out quiet. Not angry. Almost too quiet. My mother's mouth tightened. "We said we'd try." That was when I felt something inside me go very still. Because I remembered the text exactly. "We will help with whatever insurance doesn't cover." Not try. Will. My phone was in my purse. The screenshot was right there. I could have opened it. I could have placed it on the desk between us. But my hand stayed on the folder. My father rubbed his forehead. "You've been managing for a long time, Maya. Maybe ask the doctor if waiting a few more months would really make that much difference." A few more months. Past the wedding. Past the photos. Past the sunset terrace and the open bar and the welcome bags with sunscreen and mints. My mother added, "No one is saying don't have it. We're just saying this is a lot right before Tyler's wedding." The counselor shifted slightly in her seat. I heard the sentence exactly as she said it. My surgery was not a family crisis. It was bad timing. The appointment moved on because hospital systems do not stop just because your heart does. The counselor printed more papers, explained payment offices, and told me the surgeon would discuss medical timing with me directly. I nodded at the right places. My parents stood as soon as she said we could wait down the hall for the consultation room. My mother seemed relieved to leave that little office. My father looked like he had survived something unpleasant. I wanted to ask them why they had come at all. Instead, I followed. In the exam room, there were 2 chairs against the wall and an exam table covered in white paper. This time, I sat on the edge of the table because standing hurt too much to hide. The folder sat beside me. The emergency contact form was tucked halfway out, my mother's name visible in my own handwriting. Diane Bennett. Relationship. Mother. My mother noticed it too. For 1 second, her eyes rested on the form. Then she looked away. My father checked his watch. "Doctors always run late," he muttered. My mother answered a wedding message. I saw Tyler's name flash across her screen, followed by a string of palm tree emojis from someone in the group chat. I stared at the floor. Then the door opened. The doctor stepped in wearing a white coat, tablet in one hand. He looked down at the screen first. "Maya Bennett?" I lifted my head. And for a second, I forgot about my parents. Because I knew his face. Older, sharper, more tired around the eyes, but still familiar. Adrian Vale. In high school, he had been the boy my parents didn't want me spending time with. His mother cleaned houses in our neighborhood, and my mother used to say things like, "He seems nice, but you need friends with direction." My father once called him a kid with no future, not knowing I heard him from the hallway. But Adrian had seen things other people missed. Once, after my parents skipped my award night because Tyler had a soccer dinner, Adrian found me outside the gym pretending to look for my ride. He didn't make me explain. He just sat beside me until I stopped crying. Now he was standing in front of me as my surgeon. His eyes moved from my face to my mother, then to my father. The professional expression slipped for less than a second, but I saw it. Recognition. Shock. Then something controlled and hard. My mother looked annoyed by the silence. "Is something wrong?" Adrian did not answer her right away. He looked back at me, then at the paperwork beside me, then at my parents again. And in that small room, with my hospital wristband tight around my wrist and my mother's name still written as my emergency contact, he asked the question that made the air disappear. "You're her parents?" My mother's face tightened first. "I'm sorry," she said. "Do we know you?" Adrian took one quiet breath. I watched him put whatever he was feeling somewhere private. When he looked back at me, he was a doctor again. "This appointment is about Maya," he said. "So I want to be very clear about her condition." My father shifted in his chair. We were just discussing finances. I understand, Adrian said. But medically, delaying the surgery is not a small decision. The room changed after that. Not loudly. No one yelled. No one confessed. No one threw anything across the room. Adrian pulled up my scans and explained what was happening in my spine. He spoke calmly, but he did not soften the truth to make my parents comfortable. He said waiting several more months could increase nerve involvement. He said recovery could become harder. He said my ability to keep working without worsening pain mattered. My mother pressed her lips together. We're not saying she shouldn't have it. We're just saying every family has limits. Adrian looked at her for a second. Then he turned back to me. Maya is the patient, he said. The question is what support she has access to, not whether her pain is convenient. I looked down at my wristband. For years, I had needed someone to say something close to that. Not dramatic. Not angry. Just true. My father tried to recover. Doctor, with respect, this is a private family matter. Adrian nodded once. And her medical care is a patient matter. I'm going to have our patient advocate come in. Financial counseling can review assistance programs, payment arrangements, and documentation of medical necessity. There are steps before postponing surgery. My mother's eyes flicked toward me. For the first time that day, she looked nervous. Not worried about me, worried about what the room understood. I didn't pull out the screenshot. I didn't need to. The truth had already landed without it. Adrian did not rescue me. He did not make the bill disappear. He did not punish my parents. He simply opened a door they had been standing in front of. A patient advocate came in 20 minutes later. She gave me forms for assistance review, explained the payment plan, told me what income documents to bring, and helped me understand what insurance could still reconsider with the surgeon's notes. My parents sat through it silently. When we left, my mother said, "I hope you're not going to twist this into something ugly." I looked at her for a long moment. I didn't make it ugly, I said. I just stopped hiding it. That was the first sentence I said that day that felt like it belonged to me. The fallout wasn't instant. Real life usually isn't. But people noticed when I didn't go to Tyler's wedding events. An aunt called to ask if I was okay. A cousin messaged me after hearing 2 different versions of why I had chosen not to come. I didn't give speeches. I didn't post anything online. I only told the truth when I was asked. That was enough. By the time Tyler's wedding photos went up, the comments were thinner than expected. My mother stopped sending me group messages. My father left one voicemail saying the family didn't need outside opinions, which told me outside opinions had already arrived. Tyler texted me once. "You really couldn't just come?" I stared at it for a while, then deleted it. I mailed the invitation back in its original envelope. No note. No explanation. Just returned. My surgery happened 6 weeks later. It was not easy. Recovery hurt. The bills still existed. I filled out forms, made calls, set up payments, accepted help from the hospital systems I hadn't known how to ask for. But the strangest part was that I felt less alone after my parents stepped back than I had felt when they were sitting beside me. A month after surgery, I sat at my small kitchen table with my brace resting against the chair beside me. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. A new emergency contact form lay in front of me. When I reached the line that said family contact, my pen stopped. For a moment, I thought of my mother's name in my own handwriting. Diane Bennett. Relationship. Mother. Then I left that section blank. Under approved medical advocate, I wrote Adrian Vale. Not because he was family, because when I was vulnerable, he protected the truth. Beside the form sat Tyler's returned wedding invitation, still unopened, the cream card stock bent slightly at one corner from the mail. I felt sad looking at it, but I also felt clear, because family is not the people who expect access to your pain. Family is the people who show up when protecting you costs them something. And for the first time in my life, I understood that silence had helped me survive. But boundaries were how I was going to live.